One of my Facebook friends, or should I say our Facebook friend, sent me a note the other day and said, "You may find this interesting." And what he sent me was a survey from Georgia Southern University, which I had never heard of, but I don't spend much time in Georgia or in the South for that matter. And it was a survey, I guess, from their journalism school, asking how many MMJs are in your newsroom. MMJ being multimedia journalists, the same thing as Mojos, the same thing as VJs, which is a term I like, since I made it up a long time ago, but nobody seems to follow it anymore. In any event, I filled out the survey, and although, because we do run a bunch of local TV stations for Verizon's Fios network, and of course they're 100% VJ, so I thought I was valid to fill out the survey. And what astonished me was two things. First, the kind of questions that they were asking, which is, how many MMJs do you have? Do you think MMJs get better stories? Do you still have camera? This kind of stuff. It's astonishing to me because unfortunately next year marks 30 years since we first started this whole VJ thing. And in all honesty, when we started the VJ thing, I thought it's going to go like that because it was so obvious and so simple. I had been doing it myself for a couple of years, and I had been a producer at CBS before that on Sunday morning, which still looks exactly the same way it looks when I worked there, except Charlie Kuralt is dead. The only thing that has changed there is the staff, but the stories look exactly the same. Anyway, after I spent a couple of years running around the world doing my own VJ thing with my own little camera, being entrepreneurial, I thought, I'm going to take this to CBS, and they're going to buy it, and then I'm going to make a fortune, and it's all going to be over very quickly. So I took it to Larry Tisch, who had just bought CBS and was known as Larry the Liquidator because he was looking to cut costs and maximize profits. And I thought, here's a great way to save money because we'll get rid of the cameraman, the soundman, the producer, the editor, and actually it all works, Larry. Just take a look at it. And I wrote him one of my letters that said, I can save you millions of dollars. I only need 10 minutes of your time. And he wrote back and said, you got 10 minutes. And he sent me to see a guy named Larry Baer, who was a guy who was in the office next to him. And Larry Baer also got it right away. And he said, well, the best thing we can do here is let's do an experiment. Let's do a test to see, A, the quality of the pieces, and B, how much it actually costs. Why don't you come up with a story, and we'll do it on CBS Evening News, and then we'll track the quality of the product, how long it takes, and what it costs, and compare it to how CBS Evening News does regular pieces. So he went, great. So I came up with this story idea. At that time, the Americans were sending grain aid to Djibouti, which is a little French colony just north of Somalia or Ethiopia, and they were starving to death. And so I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Iowa, and I'm going to start on the cornfields, and I'm going to follow the corn as it gets combined and gets put on a ferry, a barge, and goes down the Mississippi River to Louisiana, and then it gets put on a freighter, and it goes all the way across the ocean to Djibouti, where it gets unloaded, and the corn gets off, and it puts in little bags, and then it gets distributed to starving people in Djibouti. And I'm going to do the whole story by myself, just me with a little camera, and I'm going to do it for CBS News. And they went, and Larry Baer went, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't you work that out? So I got the visas, and I got the injections, and I got the clearances, and I got the farm, and I got the ship, and I got everything all lined up. And Larry Baer said, what are you going to charge for doing this? Well, I said, I added up all the costs of doing it and my time, which was like 2 months. And I said, you know what I want? I want $5,000 total, and I'll give you a finished piece. You know, a minute and a half, 2.5 minutes, 3 pieces, whatever you want. Larry Baer went, great. He said, let's go talk to Lane. Lane Bernardos was then running CBS News, executive producer. And so I went to Lane and I said, here's the idea that I have, blah, 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 blah. And I got this letter back from Lane Bernardos, president of CBS News, and he said, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do your story, but thank you very much for suggesting it to CBS Evening News. And I wrote back to Lane and I said, you don't understand, Larry Baer, Larry Tisch, all this kind of stuff. And he wrote back and they said, thank you very much for submitting your story suggestion to CBS News, but unfortunately, we don't take outside submissions. So I went back to see Larry Baer and I said, hey, what are we going to do here? You know, it's not working out. You got to go talk to him. And Larry Baer came back to me and said, unfortunately, I can't make the executive producer of the Evening News, he was actually the president of CBS News, do a story he doesn't want to do, so that was the end of the experiment. And I thought, whoa, this is crazy. So I called a friend of mine, Max Robbins, who then was working for Variety, and I said, Max, I don't understand. I don't understand what happened here. I was young and I was stupid. And Max said, don't you understand? They want you to die. They want you to go away. And I said, why? He said, because you'll go on the thing and you go to Iowa and you go to Djibouti and you'll deliver the grain and it'll work and it'll be a fine piece, not genius, but it'll be fine. And then Larry Tisch will say, how much did this cost? And they said $5,000. And Larry Tisch will say, from now on, we're going to do all the stories the way Rosenblum does the stories. No more cameramen, no more soundmen, no more producers. Nobody wants that to happen. The executive producers don't want it. The reporters don't want to carry their own cameras. The cameramen don't want to get fired. They want you to die. And so what I thought would be a very quick turnaround turned into a 30-year career of constantly explaining the most obvious thing to people and having them go, well, I'm not really sure, and also charging them sometimes enormous amounts of money to tell them the most obvious thing in the world. And here we are 30 years later, and to me it's still the most obvious thing in the world. You get a reporter, you give them a camera, you go, here's the camera, there's the door, go make a story. And they come back and you put it on the air. This is how newspapers have worked for 150 years. Newspapers do not send out crews with one guy to hold the pencil and the other to hold the piece of paper, another guy to hold the eraser, and it's insane. The way television is made is insane, but they continue to do that. So I was quite intrigued to see this story, this news piece, that Quincy Media, which I never heard of, Quincy Media, but they're in like Minnesota and Illinois and Indiana and West Virginia, actually, Massachusetts and Western New York and some New Jersey, actually. They're a pretty big company, and they are buying 200 JVC's GMY HY 150s, which actually we have right here because this is what we use for our VJs, and we've used them how many years now? 10 years. 10 years. We've been using the same cameras, and so Mazel Tov. Right, Mazel Tov Quincy Media, which they probably don't say in Quincy Media, but Baruch Hashem to you, a very good idea, a little late in the game, but better late than never. Were I setting up a VJ-driven television station now, I would have all iPhones, actually, because these suckers, they certainly shoot, and they're not heavy compared to Betacams, but it's still something you schlep around. And in the meantime, the phones, they shoot, they edit, they do everything. Live stream like we're doing right now, so why shouldn't your reporters be empowered that way? The other thing, Quincy Media, just out of curiosity, you have, from what I can tell, about 24 local TV stations, but you're only buying 200 cameras, and you're only going to equip the MMJs. Why don't you have everybody in the building should be able to go out and shoot and make stories? I mean, that's why they're there. Local television stations are magnets for people who want to tell stories. As I told you yesterday, I'm reading the history of the Daily Mail and Fleet Street and all these tabloids in England, and they are natural magnets for people who want to work there. They love telling stories. They love finding people. People who go to work for local television stations or networks, they want to tell stories. They don't want to be researchers. They don't want to get coffee. They don't want to do all that kind of crap. So you give them all iPhones. You give them training, which obviously you get at thevj.com. Be sure to check that out. Or you can take our boot camps. And you unleash them. So you take a local television station like Quincy has, maybe there's 40 or 50 employees in the station, I have no idea, and suddenly you have 40 or 50 cameras on the street every day making stories, because that's really what journalism and news is all about. So there we are. And so back to my survey from Georgia State, Southern Georgia University, which I urge you to take a look at. You can Google them and answer the questions.
We're on the Wi-Fi. Oh, we're here.
We're back again. I don't know what happened there, but
We'll wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up anyway. And it's Spectrum, Time Warner, which used to be Spectrum, which is,
No, Spectrum, which used to be
Spectrum, which used to be Time Warner, and the connection is terrible. I hope you didn't lose too much contact. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back again tomorrow at 12:30 with yet another rant about the state of television journalism in America and small cameras, and another pimp session for thevj.com. Sign up, 10 days free, and 20% discount for friends and family. And if you're here on Facebook, you're my friend.